Welcome to the Branded Impact Podcast. On this show, we go beyond surface level branding, honest conversations with industry leaders, behind the scenes of aligned brand building, and actionable insights to help you elevate your presence. I'm your host, Jocelyn Espejo, aka Joe. Hit subscribe and join me each week for the Branded Impact Podcast. Welcome back to the Branded Impact Podcast. I'm so excited to have Holly Neujhar. She is the founder of N2 Physical Therapy and Sisu Business Practice. And Holly, can you start by telling us a little bit about who you are and what you're the most passionate about? What inspired you to start your businesses?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for having me here. This is going to be very fun. I was the typical high school graduate who thought I was going to go one way, changed my mind multiple times, and ended up in this outpatient PT practice learning about initially women's health. And that took me down this track. I got my doctorate at Duke University, where there was a focus on doing women's and then expansion into pelvic health. And this really fit my heart because I think this is an underserved population. These are very intimate issues. And as I work with my PT teams, one of the most beautiful things about it is you can make such a massive impact just educating somebody about this unknown area of your body. And I basically got out of school, ran into some career situations that were optimal for my values and my mission, and sort of we joke we jumped off the cliff and the net appeared and started my own business. And it's evolved over time as healthcare does, but it really now has become this place where I think the biggest impact I can make is helping providers be healthy, helping our field as physical therapists be healthy, and trying to provide this service and make it as accessible as possible, where we help everybody who has a pelvic floor with pelvic floor problems.
So rewind just a little bit because I think this is amazing and it is underserved, but I think we kind of glazed over what it is. So tell me a little bit about what N2 Physical Therapy is and who do you serve?
Yes. So I'm going to say specifically right now, N2 physical therapy focuses on primarily pelvic health. However, our pelvic floors are what we're sitting on right now, and they're in our pelvic bones, and they are highly interactive and integrated to the body as a whole. So part of our brand and our values are that we treat the whole person. So we bring this aspect of physical therapy into care that does provide internal and external vaginal exams so we can access that muscle. We help GI issues. We have a lot of patients who have pain with sex, and two has tried to create, to kind of fulfill my mission, a really safe space for providers to learn and talk about this area and have a way to access continuing education that is affordable, meaningful, and actionable, but also to provide a space for the patient in this somewhat scary, evolving world of healthcare where they can learn about this area and get what they need to either treat it directly for a direct issue. Something like that would be pain with sex, urinary incontinence, bowel issues, fecal incontinence, or treat the way that this is impacting your low back. And maybe this is why you've had stubborn low back or hip pain for years.
That's insane. And so for me, it's always intriguing how interconnected the body is. And
Mhm.
then you go in with one symptom or concern, and then you start to realize if you unfold and peel back some layers that it can actually be a different source. So I love that you've got this mission. And it's not just the patients, then you also want to educate providers so that this can be offered and utilized and spread. So it's outside of just N2 physical therapy, but also impacting other patients that could be accessed in different places, correct?
Correct. Absolutely.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about the Sisu business practice, because that's a second brand that you've decided to kick off and spin off. What led you to start that?
Yeah, there's so many angles to this. I think you're going to laugh. I started N2 very young, and I did realize I was out of my league pretty quickly, so I went back and got an MBA, and I did this leadership track. And I remember having a couple of professors that really inspired me, and I was able to identify then that what is very meaningful to me and everything that I do is a purpose and a purpose-driven life. So one of the issues, there was multiple issues. COVID had hit, everything about healthcare had changed. I don't know if you've ever experienced like a veil is lifted from your eyes and you see things quite differently in the world around you. So I started Sisu practice initially to try to provide a platform to help train other providers in pelvic health more efficiently, more affordably, and quickly. But I quickly learned that this is kind of a cool evolving little business baby for me. So we do the mentoring, we utilize this in house, and we create these really standard programs for pelvic health providers who want to learn how to be more autonomous, learn how to dry needle the pelvic floor that's not offered everywhere, and kind of have an inaction, hands on approach in addition to a didactic approach. But I've also had other business owners come to me and ask questions about, okay, if we want to do a business this way and I'm having this problem. So it's also become a bit of a coaching platform.
That's amazing.
I'm still playing with the Sisu practice. I love the teaching part. I love educating the community, and I've left it as a business very open ended to sort of let it evolve with the times. So I'm not sure where it will go, but this is the heart of it right now, and we're having a lot of fun with it.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Okay, so I know that we're talking earlier and we're like, okay, this is how busy it is. So I'm just curious in the branding space when you're trying to navigate branding even one business, but let's focus again on the N2 physical. Like, what are some of the things that you've done to be able to brand and get your name recognition out there? And I know at one point referral sources were huge, but you've done some things to pivot to try to amplify your business. So can we talk a little bit about how you shifted out of the DIY into what you're doing now?
Yes, absolutely. The healthcare space is changing. And I think when N2 started, we were a very patient centered, patient focused, not that we're not anymore, but just for the way that physical therapy was and my own experiences working for other people, we weren't thinking a ton about the provider. And then we've gone through the past 5 years. We've seen changes in insurance and in reimbursement. And I had what felt like a very real panic attack one day where we need to evolve. Like, we need to focus on the provider. We need to meet in the middle with insurances where we can accept that reimbursement and we can't. And so what I'm doing right now, and we've focused a lot on this year, and I really have to shout out to the teams at N2 Physical Therapy and the leaders, Chantal and Ali, I have there, because we have done this as a team. This isn't just me. I have the MBA and I get the idea, but this is how this takes shape and succeeds. So what we've done now is I've kind of shifted into physical therapy to make it feel more to PTs like they have the autonomy to feel like a business owner, but without the risks. So there's all this more boring stuff to talk about what that looks like and how you set up a package and you pay people who want both, like stability in WW2, but to have high bonus potential as they deserve. But it's made us really shift how we work with the community. And that's had some painful growth things, but it's been really eye opening. So, Colorado is widely known to have the lowest reimbursement rates. And like I can share with you, like one of the lowest ones we work with now is 80 a visit. That doesn't make sense to provide one on one care with a doctor using higher skill sets with dry needling with neuromod. So we've been kind of evolving as a team to make negotiations where we can, to go more out of network and to be a lot more vocal in the community about this field and the things that need to change and how we need to work together to strengthen ourselves as providers. And that has felt like a positive shift. It feels more like a team across the company, but it is a growing pain all the same,
I
which I
can
can see on
imagine.
your face. You totally understand.
Y-
So that's where
Yeah.
we're at right now.
So what are some of the things that you're doing as far as like I mean, I know I love the idea and the vision of it, but then I guess give me some like tactical things. Like how does that actually come to fruition?
Yeah, and that circles back to your DIY shift. So I really was a little DIY business owner before, and we have around 30 employees right now, and you just get to the point where that's too much. So we use a social media company and we work directly with them on our marketing and what we create and what we put out. I think you called them assets earlier. I brought in, her name is Monica Vita, and she's a leadership and development coach with a history in recruiting. So that's one thing we are doing that I know is really different is we're shifting our interview process and we're looking for culture fit because we know we can teach people how to do this if they have the right values, if they align with our mission. And she also provides to the teams, which I was trying, but DIY gets out of hand. She helps them with burnout and communication and setting up team meetings. And we have just sort of adapted to maybe not taking it all on our own. My leads utilize her for developing leadership skills, and that creates more of a an environment for people to have direct go-tos to help with skill set. So we've sort of built a stronger, more diverse team.
I love
The
that.
other thing we are doing is myself and Allie Pomerantz, who leads the Uptown Clinic, just got board certified as women's certified specialists through the APTA. That was a really difficult test. We were very nervous.
Congrats.
And we're actually going to start a residency program. So that's a formal one. So that's another way we're kind of shifting to get our mission out there and to create happy, healthy, really talented providers so that people have more access to public health.
That's amazing. Now that seems like a really huge I mean, board certifications, that's a huge feat. So congratulations. So proud of you. That's amazing. Now, how did you know it was time to shift out of DIY into getting more help? Because I feel like that's something that a lot of us encounter where we're like, okay, there's this concept and there comes a point where you're like, I know I can't do it on myself, but then you still have that question like, am I really ready? Do I not? What do I look for first? Or how do you outsource first? So what were your triggers or your points where you're like, okay, that's it? Like, was it when you got to, I mean, 30 employees is also really big, but what were some of the things that you finally said, this is my sign. I need to get help.
I think that's an awesome question because I think it's really hard for entrepreneurs to be vulnerable in this. But I think the number one sign was feeling a lot of burnout myself and feeling like this isn't fun anymore. I
Mm,
feel like I go one step forward and two steps back. And I felt like if we are really going to get to this new place, which I knew was going to take years, we need people who are the experts of their craft in social media. And it is so important to me that what I do has the deepest intent and promotes our field, does not come from a negative space. I understand the marketing angle of this and promoting yourself by putting other approaches down, but
mm.
that's something I really wanted to stray from, which is partly why I chose this company. They're fantastic. They're so positive. And I realized like it is absolutely okay that I'm not the expert in this. And I went through this really silly line of thinking in my head where I'm like, well, I'll just go get a law degree or I'll just go get a social media degree. And then I was like, you have to stop. Yeah, this is getting ridiculous. It's time to learn how to accept that you cannot do it all. And it was overarchingly this feeling of you're stuck in the mud. Have you ever experienced that? And that's
Yes.
what led me to seek outward and find people that absolutely align with my values. And I was also really looking for people where I could say to them, I understand your approach, but let's communicate around how that's not working for us. And it was a productive versus a defensive conversation. So I'm really proud of the teams that we've built and the leaders that we have in place. They're all fantastic at that.
Okay, so that's very heavy, and there's two folds to that. One, I want to touch on the fact that this is something that shifted my mindset when it was time to outsource. There was someone, and I do that rabbit hole too. Like I could do this, I could learn how to do this. But then the question, and somebody challenged me, they when you know that something needs to get done, the question should become, in this you shift and you scale, how can this get done, and who can do it for you? Are you the expert, like you said, in social media? Are you the expert in these pieces? And if you're not, that's okay because you're an expert in what you do best. So you could have learned more about social media, but you're also a board certified physical therapist. So let's not take away from your zone of genius because a marketing team can't come in and do what you do. But a marketing team can come in and do the marketing so that you can focus on what you get to do and do that well. And then they can come in and support you. So I think that's a huge shift for a lot of people that I hear often. It's like, when do I know? And it's when you're stuck in the mud, like Holly's talking about.
Yes.
And when you start to lose sight of why you even did this in the first place, you got
Mhm.
into entrepreneurship for whatever your story is, whether it was time freedom or you really had a passion about doing something. A lot of times I hear in our stories that we shifted because corporate or whatever we were working with had its limitations and ceilings. And it was like, this is just not the direction I want to go. It doesn't align with my values. I can't really take that next step that I want. So we go off on our own. And then we realize very quickly that when you're on your own, you are the everything
Yes.
until you can grow to the point that you can start to get help. But then there's a second piece that you said in this, and this is what I loved too. And it was not really part of the question, but it's a great conversation to have. How do you identify who to work with? And so you brought up a key point where it's like, yes, you are the expert, but I want a collaboration approach. I want to be able to communicate with you what I see, what I need. And if it's not working for me, and because I think sometimes what I see is people will say, well, it's working in the metrics. Like the metrics are working. And it's like, yes, if I just look at the metrics, but is it resulting in how I need it to work? And so then having a company or a partner is really what you're looking for. Is you're looking for someone who can partner with you and they're not just checking boxes and going through. It's like, yes, if the metrics are meeting in a certain standard, but they're not converting to what the client needs, there needs to be an open conversation about that. And I love that. I think that's huge in the
Mhm.
approach that you take when you're looking for people to work with.
Yes, I think it's huge. I think it's important. And you do develop intimate relationships with people, and that's what leads to success. If you're all aligned in your values and you're all going the same direction, you can do really great things. So we have gotten really particular about that, and it's actually felt very nice. So
I love that. And I think
mhm,
that's the piece. Like ultimately, you're looking for a long term relationship. And if you've got someone who's fully invested, not only in providing their service, but also in what is that going to result for you? How is that going to help you grow? How is that going to help you attain your achievements? Then it's a win win across the board.
completely agree.
Love that. So tell me about some of the things that you're doing as far as like, I think let's talk a little bit about brand strategy. What are some of the things that you're doing on a regular basis that you really have take traction, whether that be the website, a certain cadence? We chatted about videos, how you're an
Oh,
introvert, but you're still getting yourself out there. So what are some of the things like strategic wise that you feel like these things, if I had to do it again, I either would have done it sooner or I absolutely non-negotiables, these are working, we're going to continue this.
yes. If I had to do it again, what I would have done much sooner is build this team. But that, like we've kind of mentioned, that is the one thing, is when you feel like you can give up control of something that's not your expertise, do it. Second is we're going through the website right now and trying to really shift it from being all about the patient to adding in what we really want to do for providers. And I think this is an interesting aspect of being a small business owner. I don't have a lot of intention on getting extremely large or franchising. I'm all focused on quality. So we are working on that aspect of our branding right now. And yes, we do the videos. I'm too shy to like sit down and create a reel. If you are following me on my personal Instagram, it's all about my volunteer work. It's all dogs. Like that's where I'm comfortable. So I think what we'll do next is I'll probably video a little bit about how do you communicate to a patient about your worth? And how do you communicate about how insurance works when that gets thrown at you? Because those are really hard questions. And the field of physical therapy is largely moving this route where they don't even accept insurance, and you rent a room and you become self-pay. And I think it's really important that we start to highlight how much you learn being on a team and being on a dynamic that's working for really the bigger picture together. And how do we evolve so we can negotiate with insurance companies or move legislation? So that's kind of where we're moving right now. The website stuff can get so irritating to me sometimes, because the minute you change a policy or you change an insurance company, you've got to change something. So we try to like keep that to a minimum and do more what I like to call building. And we are working really hard on that residency program right now. So we're kind of moving into that and what we want that to look like for us. So it's all just sort of like this constantly moving body. And that, I think that makes it fun. You never get bored, but that's probably where we're at right now in this next step.
I love it. So the pivots, and I think that's something that I find intriguing too, because sometimes people get caught up in the, this is what I started with, this is where I have to stay. And
Yeah.
that's not the case. So many of us start somewhere, and then as you're building and as you're growing, either your business or as a person, or as time changes, or you see needs or shifts, sometimes something external forces it. I know that in the insurance world, that's, I think, what drove a lot of this, right? That there was a major shift in the insurance platform. I saw that too, even with lawyers, like and I don't know if it's across the country, but I know for sure in Florida, there was major shifts in like how personal injury or homeowners insurance claims and all that stuff. And so providers and lawyers in that space had to significantly shift how they practice. So the pivots can come from all different directions and all different reasons. But I love the fact that you've pivoted, you realize that there is a change. And then now you're not afraid to change direction. And that's okay. Like it's okay to start to shift. And then something to be said too with the websites. I think this is where a lot of people feel like everything has to be on the website. And I feel like you need to have just enough on the website that you get them to call you because
I
then you can give them and then you can give them the information that you really need versus having to worry about did I update an insurance or did I update a package or what pivot did I make and then now my website is still backdated. But I think that speaks to me for something that a lot of people don't realize a website isn't a one and done. You don't
Yeah.
put up your website and don't touch it again. You need to make sure that you're staying consistent and relevant in all those pieces. So, a couple more questions as far as like your cadence. Like, do you find that you're posting on social media, you have a website, now we're pivoting and you're shifting away from patient to doing this and then major aspirations for building this residency program. And I love your heart in trying to expand who is trained in this methodology of pelvic health. And so many of us need it. And I think I was just joking with a friend. I was like, man, they don't tell you a lot of things about having babies, like the shifts that can happen in your body after. And then I'm like, oh, you can do something about that? Like, hold on a minute. I didn't know that was a thing. Like, so many of us live with so much that you eventually find out there is an option to mitigate, to minimize, to even reduce or eliminate. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to get and make it easier for people like you to let other people, women especially, know that there's options to help and to improve. But that's a different soapbox for a different day.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some of the things I think really quick, top three, like you are posting on social media. So do you feel, and then is it hard for you to measure return on investment? I think that's something that keeps popping up. Like people are like, do I need to be there? But can I directly tie in? What are your thoughts on that conversation as far as a presence and the return?
Yes, I do think it's hard to use social media to measure return on investment. There's, I think I've learned that people look at what a return on investment is a little differently too, as I've talked to people. So to me, and to chime in if you feel differently, it's does that get somebody through the door, getting an appointment with you, and helping whatever problem that they're having. That to me is what that is. And I do think that's hard to measure. I think social media, especially in the spirit of Instagram, I think it's great. It can put a lot of information out there, but sometimes I think people measure that on followers. I don't know if everybody's aware you can buy followers. So that's not always like an honest return.
Right.
So I think step one is you kind of have to accept, I think what gets a better return on investment is having a better website and having the SEO in place. And that's a little bit easier to measure. That gives you direct input on the back end when you look at your analytics. But I also think you maybe need to shift how you're looking at that. And I know there's the hard business concept of it that's all about money. And we kind of talked about that earlier. But so Sisu practice is the baby business. And I do have a free public male health lecture and female health lecture. So I feel like I'm getting a positive return on an investment for my one mission of getting more information out there because I get constant, you made $0. Somebody purchased your free course. And every time I think, yes, that means somebody's gonna learn
Learn
about
some.
it. But like from
Yes.
there, there's no measurement on if they make an appointment with you unless they tell you. So I think it is different. I think especially I think you said something earlier that really resonates with me. Like N2 has gotten bigger. And when you start, you're wearing all the hats, you're doing everything, and then you grow and you need to evolve. I think with a smaller situation like Sisu, that's a little bit easier to look at and properly define for whatever that mission might be. So I think the answer is yes, but I see little wins here and there
No,
that
I
make
think
me
that
feel good about it.
and I love it because you're shifting your focus on what success looks like. And I think
Yeah.
that's where I agree with you 100%. For me, I feel like the social media topic is it's hard and I do feel like you need to have a presence. Now, how often are you posting? What platforms are you posting on? All of that really is determined by what is your mission? Who are you trying to speak to? What is your ultimate outcome? But
Mhm.
just because you can't necessarily measure the return doesn't mean you don't need to have a presence there. It's just how much do you put in? So then what else do you do any type of email nurture campaigns? Talk me through a few of the other things that you guys do. And I just have to comment. I love the fact that you're giving free and that you're lit up by the $0 sale
Yeah.
notification. Because your definition of success is not measured in dollars. It's
Yeah.
measured on exposure and getting awareness out there. So that's really cool. But for those that are also trying to make, you've got a business that's running really well and making money on the side. So for those that are like, okay, that sounds great. I would love to get there one day. But what are some of the things that can really drive some revenue? What are some of the other pieces you have in place?
Yes. And now that you say that, that is kind of the next thing on our list. We aren't doing email campaigns, we're not doing letters. I get so irritated by feeling spammed and scammed. And I think that I want to make sure we approach that in a way that is really meaningful and really obvious. But we get active in the community. So, for example, a large gym around here just asked me to come in and teach on pelvic health to their Pilates instructors. We do a lot word of mouth. We do a lot of blogs to get active. I think I have this major advantage that N2's been open since 2011 and we never needed social media to build the company. So we are in that phase of it where, yeah, I think email campaigns are going to be great. I think a newsletter is going to be great. We'll get there. We're just a little too busy with the reorganization we've just gone through right now. But once you get through that, then that's where it becomes really fun. And you build your network and you get out there and meet people and you have really open, honest relationships with your clients. And then they help connect you. So that's the part of it. Sometimes I think gets lost in our virtual world is it is about it's I get it that if everything's virtual and everything's a cohort, you're going to make more money. But I do think there's some element of it that speaks a lot to building a really authentic relationship that leads to hard conversations. And that's how we grow and that's how we get more resilient.
I
So
love
that's
that.
how we look right now. We absolutely need to do more on email. It's just been on the back burner.
Which means that you guys have really built a business based on, if I hear this correctly, the experience. Like your biggest piece has been word of mouth, correct? And I think any healthy business, if you look at where your business is coming from, you really should have word of mouth being one of your bigger sources because that means you're doing something right. But
Yeah.
this hones in. I actually just did a story the other day because I was at Starbucks and my son and I had walked about a half mile to get to Starbucks. And I was like, awesome. Can I get a cup of water while I'm waiting on my coffee? And so I get this free cup of water, and they still gave me the message on the cup. And I
Mhm.
think it was like, I got a tall cup of water, but it says like, stand tall today. And I thought, how neat that even on a free cup of water, the barista still took time to write a little message on my coffee cup or the cup of water, but coffee cup. But anyway, I'm like, branding is so much more than a logo and colors. It's
Yeah,
an
it is.
experience. It's how you make people feel. And it may be silly. And anybody who's not a Starbucks fan, and we can get into how much I pay for my coffee, but it's fine. It is a feeling. When I walk into Starbucks, I get a feeling. And when I get that cup of coffee, like I enjoy the little message that I get. And sometimes I'm like, well, this justifies however much I just spent on this cup of coffee. But I was in Springfield, Illinois. And in Springfield, Illinois, this tiny little place, I still got the same experience as I would in a big city. And I
Yes.
think to me, that's what branding really encompasses. And so you've nailed that. And you're like, yes, I should. It's a should. I should get into email marketing. That will have a benefit. It absolutely will when you get there. But you've built a business, it sounds like, on the experience. You've made sure that when your clients come in, they feel valued. You're providing that so that they can send you clients. And now that's shifting into providers as well. But either way, your biggest focus then has been on the experience.
And Starbucks is the best example because they do that. Like I take my Great Dane through for a pup cup frequently and they write a little like paw on it or something. And that I don't think you can always be perfect as a business every time. Maybe Starbucks will mess up my order once, but then you're more of, you know, that's okay because the overall experience. And the thing about shifting to providers that I am finding this really renewed passion for, I have really close relationships with my team. And I think that they enjoy that too, is we were never taught getting our doctors of PT how to protect ourselves from burnout and from overdoing it. In fact, I would argue that some programs really make you feel like, and it's not intentional. I get it that you have to teach everything all at once, but if you don't figure it out on visit one, you're not doing a good job. So, and I think then we can kind of combine what happened with COVID and provider burnout. We all know anxiety is running really high. And then let's take in social media where you can post something so kind and authentic and honest, and somebody is going to say something negative about it. So, being a provider is hard. And I've gone through all those feelings myself, feeling really alone sometimes as a business owner in particular. And that has been fun. And I think it's brought out discomfort in all of us. And, oh, we need to explain our worth, or we need to maybe own the fact that we can only do so much today. And when we're providing good care, you're still helping someone. So that's been a fun mission. That feels like I'm going to learn so much through this. And I'm just scratching the surface of where to go with it. And that's where the team comes in. So that's been really cool.
That is really cool. And just watching the morph, like as it morphs and becomes different. And I admire the fact that you keep highlighting your team and giving them acknowledgement, because that's so amazing. You know, a lot of people have teams underneath them, but then it feels like they're doing it by themselves. And this is where we've grown up in this world. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel the same, that there's almost like this feeling of, if I can't figure it out on my own, there's something wrong with me. And I don't think that was the intention. Like if you look at major corporations, and I think this is where a lot of people forget it. When you're looking at major corporations, they have so many layers of support. There's a CEO, there's a CFO, there's marketing people, there's VPs underneath that if they're big enough. And then even for me, like I was in operations and dental, and I didn't have to do HR. I had an HR person. There was an accounting person. There was a marketing person. I got to be responsible for a certain area. And then I worked with people. And so for some reason, when we get into entrepreneurship, there's a shift where we feel like we have to do it all alone. And that's not the case. And you can do so much more when you align yourself with a team of people. And you said it earlier, you have your physical therapy doctorate, and then you went and got an MBA because you felt like you needed that to do business.
I
At
did
the
need
end of
that.
the day, you have this theory and you have the ideas, and I love that. But then now you've surrounded yourself with a team that can implement. And that's the key. Like you get to focus on your zone of genius and then now surround yourself with people who can help you bring that vision to life so that you can still be a person and still not burn yourself out, because we can do that so quickly. And then
Mhm.
you end up wanting to give it all up and be like, forget it, I'm not doing this because I can't do all the things. And we were never meant to do all the things. You're supposed to be able to focus on what you do best and then align yourself with people who can bring the rest of it to life. I think that's so great.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that. And I think what happens as you evolve as a business is you feel like if you can't do it all, you have failed somehow. And really, it's just sort of it's like a rebirth. Like you're just at this different level. It's not better or worse than anybody else. And you have to regrow from right there and accept that as it was is no longer operable.
So I want to take a quick quiz because you have multiple locations.
Yes, we
And
do.
so I would love to know, like, what are some of the things that you do to make sure that the experience is the same across the different locations? And like that's a core piece of your brand, is the experience and driving in new customers and clients. So I think for me, sometimes when I think about expanding or I think about bringing on additional team members, one of my biggest fears is that they're not going to do it how I do, or
Mhm.
something's going to go wrong. But what are some things that you've put in place? Is it systems? Is it in the training? Where do you feel like you really focus so that that experience is the same across all locations?
That's a great question because I think that's really challenging to do
Yeah.
because and I could absolutely choose to operate in a way, and I think you've seen this on social media, where you have to do it my way or you're wrong. And that doesn't leave any room for growth. That doesn't leave any room for creativity. If we operated like that as PTs right now, we're seeing real advancements in the use of dry needling and neuromodulation to help people get better. We would have never seen those advancements. So first and foremost, we force everybody to go through the Sisu practice training. And
Okay.
that's the lectures on the website. We set up personal labs. I have fabulous leads who help me with this now. And that's been really fun because it brings different approaches to it. We do what we call our case reviews, where you pick out some patients you're struggling with and we talk through it. We do Q&As. So we provide all of that foundation. But through it, I keep mentioning Allie, we've worked together for such a long time. Her and I can sit down on a case review someone, and we have the capacity and the trust in each other to totally disagree with how you would have approached it. And then we can teach someone like it is okay that you learn this foundation and become your own creative physical therapist, because this is giving you the ability to be safe. This is giving you the ability to help someone get better and to drive your own innovation. So we have to find that way to give the foundation and create the safe learning environment, but let them be free. One of the number one measures for me in telling if somebody is making their patients better or not is their schedule retention. So, in that again, when I have conversations with PTs who perhaps like come from a big corp, that is something we've tried to make more of a collaboration as well. Like maybe your schedule is not holding. How do we create a safe space to talk about maybe why this patient's experience wasn't good? Let's go over that as a case review. Let's talk about it. Let's give you the tools to like kind of build your skill set and draw the clientele that you feel like you can help the most. So I feel like I'm kind of not like super structured in it, but it all comes back to creating that environment for learning so people are comfortable talking to you about when the experience didn't really go well and providing the leadership across the company to seek out help. We also have the things that are a little bit more boring and black and white. Like this is how you document, this is how you market, and that's a little more straightforward. But I am trying to find a way to give people the foundation they need to be a really solid pelvic health provider. The way I'm doing it, a lot of my feedback is that it's overwhelming, but it's useful and it's great. So I've tried to create a business that offers a lot of support for that, because I don't think it's healthy for a provider to feel like you step out of this box and you're in trouble or you've made a mistake. So we do it in this huge variety of ways. And then we also help with like guiding them, what courses do you want to take outside of N2? And Ariel, who's been with the company for a while in the Uptown, she's taken a really unique route. She really wants to get certified in hormone consultation. And that will be this beautiful complement to being a pelvic health provider. And that will probably not be that'll probably be a self-pay thing she can add to her menu of services and give her career dynamics. So then we pay for that, we support that, we help her market that. That's kind of how it looks. Is that answering your question or too
A little
ranty?
bit, but
Yeah.
I think what it does, I love how you're creating a culture of a place where people can come and it sounds like they've got autonomy
Mm-hmm.
in being able to practice in a certain way. But then you kind of quickly touched on it that they're like the black and white. So there is a structure to how they document because of legal ramifications and all things, I'm sure. Um, but then for the marketing, or are there certain non negotiables, or does that just start with the interview process? So you're like, listen, I want to create an environment where they can have more autonomy and they're getting to run this almost like it's their own with the
Yeah.
backing of the support. But then in order to do that, I have to make sure that I'm bringing someone on who clearly aligns with values and the direction and how we want to ultimately care for the patient. Now, that being said, if I can find people with this values, then even if we may not necessarily agree with the treatment or the direction or the number of times that I would treat them, ultimately we still feel the same way. So is that what you're doing? Like that starting back there and then they kind of have some freedom?
Yeah, we're trying to, and I've changed the whole process. So the first interview is actually with me, and then we
Okay.
just sort of talk about everything and what drove your passion and why you are interested in joining a company like this. And then we do the second interview with Monica Vita, who's the leadership and development coach. She has a history in recruiting, and she really can hone in on that culture fit. And then lastly, they go in and they meet the person that's running that clinic. They meet the team, they see the environment, because it is a little different. And because we have such personality in our company, each space is a little bit different on what equipment is there, what equipment can we bring in, what can we do. So I think that's a really healthy and transparent way to approach it. And then this is something brand new to me. I feel this is fairly new to the industry. But the way I have shifted how they are sort of paid and brought in is all of the costs and expenses are laid out really transparently, and they can see where, like on every one of my employees, their cost is over 50%. Our biggest competition are these self-pay clinics who bring people in and say, you just bring 50% of what you make in. And that can look like high cash, but I wanted to keep that stability in place that so many people are seeking, and a full benefits. And then we set a certain line, and then after you meet those costs, you have a certain percent of profitability. And I think that actually has taken me back to my first few job experiences, and hopefully will grow into something that helps people feel like there's not a glass ceiling. So when somebody wants to go out and add a more advanced certification, then they can sit down with me and we can change their self-pay rate. We can change their market. We can change how they approach things with our media company. And I think that that drives more innovation and more creativity versus being in a space where, oh, you didn't build this many units, you're in trouble now. And I
Oh,
actually had a conversation with a PT last week, and she said, wow, you offer a lot of autonomy, that's going to feel uncomfortable to me at first. And that like definitely got my brain ticking, because we should have that autonomy. You should have the ability to work as a team to figure out how you want your career to shape.
But then they're working under your umbrella. So each location is still an N2 physical therapy. And so then on the outside, what the patients are looking at, that's where your branding comes in. That's where a lot of the pieces come in. Now, the provider itself providing the services could differ by location, but I think
Yes.
that's how you've managed to keep it branded then. So you've got one team that handles marketing for all your locations. So even though there's different maybe services that are being promoted for each location, ultimately there's still one team that's handling all of it so that you don't have one location spinning off in a completely different look, feel, message,
Definitely.
right? Is
Yeah.
that what it is? Okay.
That's
So
the
then
foundation to build from.
the foundation. So it all comes back to this is our mission, this is our vision. This is what we have as far as we've got the logo, we've got the colors, we have all of these processes in place that when you walk through as a client, I'm assuming. So when they go to schedule, this is how it's going to work. When they go to get billed, we've got it all handled because that's where a lot of times it can get sticky for brands and they don't realize that, or for businesses, the client experience. And a lot of it comes from the billing. Like if you don't have your billing in check, it's the
Yep.
fastest way to lose a patient. like,
It's
like,
the fastest way for sure. Yeah.
but so when you're going through the branding and you're looking at all those pieces, so I think for me, I'm listening to you and I'm like, wow, you've done a really good job building a business that has grown, and then you're bringing in and created a culture. And so one of your key players is someone who is developing leadership and culture for your team. So you brought in someone who's like, hey, listen, you work with them and you become and help them develop so that they can, the team leads can then, and team leads, for anyone that doesn't know what that is, I'm assuming is almost like an office manager in a practice, right? So they're responsible for everything in that specific location. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, and when I say leads, I'm referring to the physical therapy leads. So they're responsible for that. They're the go-tos for the PT. It's really important the right people in lead are meant to be there. So we have them kind of cross over to all the clinics so we can utilize the strongest across the company. But that's had this really nice effect of bringing the company together. So yeah, they do leads for everything,
I love
and
that.
they're amazing. And I think I'm speaking for them, but I think it adds a dynamic that's kind of fun to a career at times. It's not always fun, but it helps you grow from there too. So,
Well, knowing that you've got an opportunity to grow within a company is usually really aspiring because it's not like, oh, I'm going to be stuck here in this job. Some people are happy there. You know, some people are happy doing what they do and they want to be in that position for forever. And then you've got the people who are like, I want to grow. I want to do this for a little bit and then I want to take on more. So you've created a space for that and that's amazing. But that speaks to if your leads can go across the different locations, then that means that you've got systems in place that
mhm.
they can plug and play because in this office it works the same as in that office as in the other, and that's to me, whether it be operations or whatnot, I think ultimately, at least for me when I'm looking at it, that's all part of your branding. Because if they
Yeah.
can come in, and we talked about Starbucks, if I walk into a Starbucks, I know I'm in a Starbucks no matter where I am in the country. Like
hmm
the facade may be different because depending on how the building complex requires it, or for your case, the services may be a little bit different because this physical therapist does a little bit different than that physical therapist. But
hmm
ultimately, when they walk in, they're going to experience and feel like they're an N2. That's so,
Yes.
I think that's,
And
it's
the
goals.
number
It's
one
wearing.
physical therapy that they all have in common is that you can't speak to at every other outpatient practice is they all know how to treat pelvic health. So if somebody walks in and says, I saw your blog on persistent hip pain and thought maybe we could look into that, they're going to get pelvic health integrated into that. So that's that foundation that I think makes it all feel the same amongst the other things you're speaking about.
That's awesome. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're going to do a quick hot seat to wrap up. What
Oh boy.
are like, if for anybody that's been listening and they're like, okay, that's all of it sounds great. And I'm in a place where I feel like I want to grow locations. What would be the top two things that you would say, make sure you have this and this in place as you start to expand?
This is a hot seat because I can think of like a zillion things.
Oh, good.
Um, I think it's kind of the theme of this whole talk is you've got to have the like data points, the black and white in place, and then you've got to have is it best to call it maybe the energy in place? So when I went to expand locations, you do the market research, you look at the clientele, you look at who referring providers are there, you try to make sure you know what size of a clinic you want. So you need to look at those numbers, but you also need to look at, like, is this the kind of place where I can continue to expand my network? Do I have the right kind of people around me? Will I have a good like collaboration with the business down the door that might complement me with whatever they are doing? And is this going to fit the energy that I want to have? And I think we've all made a mistake in that at some point and learned the hard way, like, okay, we're going to need to adapt. But I think you got to look at both, look at the data points and then look at the culture fit of the area you want to expand to.
You keyed on something there that I'm like, gosh, do people really think about that? Like, you did, but the synergy in location. So it's
Mhm.
not just the data in as far as can your patients demand it and the load and all that stuff, but you're also looking for synergy for other people that are in that building, which makes complete
Yeah,
sense. Because if you can
definitely.
align with somebody that's going to be able to cross share patients, that's huge. You've got patients already going for one thing, or potential clients already going in that space. They know where it is. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Okay. And then if you could go back and talk to your 2011 self with some of the things that you know now, what are some things with branding that you would have done sooner?
I definitely would have gotten the social media company sooner. I think I would have, I feel like that was a time where everything was on a checklist. Like, if you're going to start a business, you do this, you do this, you do this, you need this, you have to do this. Um, I would have stepped back and allowed myself a little bit more room to be different and for
Mm.
creativity. And it kind of like moved faster into, it's okay to be a unique personality, it's okay to have a hard discussion, it's okay to fail. I think I would have taken a lot of pressure off of my brain, and I think that's part of being younger too. I was 27, 28 when I started the business, but if I could have like unburdened myself with worrying about what everybody else was thinking and just kind of followed my own step, I think that would have been huge. And that's why I do social media the way I do, because if I get on there and get too embedded in it, one, again, I'm introverted, but then I start to feel like my mission really easily gets like engulfed by wanting to like respond to something or like get connected to somebody else's. And I think just step back, and you don't have to be perfect, and you can follow your own beat, if you will, and just stick to you. I think that's very hard to do because did you experience this? The minute you become an entrepreneur, everybody is giving you this is how you do it. This is what you should do. Like
I call them the
telling you,
shoulds.
yeah,
You
just
get the long
get
list of the
away.
shoulds.
And the irony is in that is I've run into that frequently in friendships and dating, and most of those people aren't starting a business. So be
Right.
grateful that somebody's giving you input, but stick really hard to who you are and don't worry about all the boxes. Don't lose your creativity.
I love that. I think authenticity is one of the things that parallels with what you're saying. For me, you have to be authentically you. And what I see is a lot of times entrepreneurs are following a checklist, or what they're doing is trying to copycat somebody. So
Yes.
they've got somebody that they've seen has reached some level of success that they want to get to in the field. And they're like, okay, if I do everything that they're doing, then I will be successful. And so it worked for them because they were being authentic to who they are. But then if you're not like that, then it's hard to copy that. And so when you're copying something, it becomes harder to maintain. Like
Hmm.
when you're being authentic and you get to fall into that piece, it becomes easier. So I know for me, like as I've grown and I've evolved and my pivots have come through in my own branding, there's been some trends that have come out that I'm like, absolutely not. I just refuse. For anyone that wants to dance across their living room, more power to you. I love watching it and I think it's funny, but I will not be creating it because I can't even get myself to talk on camera by myself without still feeling like I've got to take 75 takes. We talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
Give me someone to talk to. I'm in all day, every day. This is no problem. The second that I am talking to the camera by myself, hmm, that becomes a whole different world. But there's been trends that have come out that I'm like, that's just not authentic to who I am. And I've tried and it just doesn't come across genuine. Versus when I've really honed in and leaned into what do I want to do? What is my mission? What is my purpose? that doesn't feel as much. Sometimes it's still hard, don't get me wrong. Like entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. And I'm not saying that like everything that I do, even when I really hone into my mission and my vision, just makes every day easy. That's not the case, but it makes it easier to be able to stay true to what you're doing. And it makes the decisions easier, right?
Mhm.
Like if you know what your North Star is, like we can we can make decisions based on, is that going to get me in the right direction, or am I going to get myself off course? Now, if you decide you want to pivot, that's fine, but then you got to fully commit to your pivot. Like
Yes.
you got to make the change.
And I feel too, we were just having this conversation before I signed into this. Knowing your values and having like a sincere, authentic mission, things are not going to be easy all the time. I really detest when people go on there as like business coaches and say, start a business, there's no risks, everybody can do it. It is risky, it is scary. And then people try it and they don't enjoy it. But I think when you know that, when you're being authentic, when you know your values and you can adapt like that, it's so much easier to get through the discomfort of the pivot and the discomfort of what might feel like a failure and realize that it's not bad. It's learning, it's growth if you don't have it. So I think if that is, I think you use the wording North Star, then you can get through that a lot easier as well and just feel a little more whole as you're going through the changes.
Yes, and that like and just hold on to the fact that failure is inevitable. You're going to try something and it's not going to work at some point in your journey. And so anyone that's told you different's lying. There's never, like failure is
It's just
just it's just
Mhm.
not. Like it's just that's just not the case. But it's how you learn from your failure and you decide how you're going to move forward. And so
Absolutely.
I like to joke and say I fail forward. I fail often, but I fail forward. Sometimes I feel like I may take a few step back while I do it. I think you may have mentioned that earlier. It's like when you're in that DIY phase, it's like I'm moving forward and then now I feel like I took 5 steps back. But then now, if you were to take I guess, a rear view look at all of those times that you felt like you were moving backwards, you weren't really moving backwards. It just felt like it in the moment, but you were just having to make some changes and adjustments. And then the next time you move forward, it wasn't as small of a step. Like, I feel like when I'm in the thick of it and I'm in the mud, I feel like I'm sinking or I'm not making traction. But then when I finally figure out how to make that step to fail forward, I do move. And I move the needle sometimes a little bit. Sometimes I'm able to quantum leap. But when you look back at the grand scheme of things, it's part of the process. And I think that's huge. I think ultimately though, I love what you said. At the end of the day, make all of your decisions based on your values and stay true to who you are. And the rest of it will start to kind of just fall into place. And then when you're ready, you get help because that's the
Yeah,
key too.
it's a good idea to get help. Yeah.
Well, Holly, I have really appreciated your time today. For anyone that's been listening and they want to learn more about Into Physical Therapy or the, I'm going to say it wrong, Sisu business.
Yeah, you got it. The
Listeners
Sisu
got it.
method.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm going to say it wrong again. But anyone that's been listening and they're interested in learning more, where can they find you?
They can find me on intophysicaltherapy.com and that links all of them together, or they can email me at holly@intophysicaltherapy.com.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And we'll also include the links in the show notes. So if anyone was listening and couldn't write that down, feel free to visit and take those peek. Again, thank you, Holly, so much for your time today. This was a really fun conversation.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun too. Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Branded Impact Podcast. If today's episode sparked something in you, please take a second to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend who's ready to unlock their rebrand era. And if you're ready for a brand that's rooted in authenticity and built for impact, one that truly reflects your story, your energy, and your evolution, let's connect. Head to brandingbyjoe.com or DM me on Instagram at brandingbyjoe. Thanks for hanging out. Now get out there, show up with purpose, and make your branded impact. I'll see you next week.